Hi everyone, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. And today I'm here for the next installment in my series where we talk all about our favorite classic writers' favorite books. I have already done 2 videos in this series. I have already done video for Leo Tolstoy's favorite books and for Fyodor Dostoevsky's favorite books. If you haven't seen those videos, I will link them up here so you can check and watch. Today I decided to change things up a little bit, just a little bit, and do I look a little bit Victorian with my shirt and my pendant? And that's because today I wanted to talk about Charles Dickens' favorite books. Now, when it comes to these writers in general, usually it's very difficult to find what they were exactly reading because not everyone was mentioning the books he was reading in their diaries or in their letters. In case with Leo Tolstoy, he was actually asked to compile a list of 100 best books of all times. One Russian newspaper wanted to publish this list compiled by him. He didn't like this idea. He said that literature is very much subjective and a book that is considered the best by one person will not be the best for another. It also depends on your age, it depends on your reading experience, it depends on your life experiences. So he didn't like that idea, and instead he compiled a list of his favorite books depending on the age of his life. So he compiled his favorite child books, he compiled his favorite youth books, and so that was the list that we were talking about in the video. In case with Charles Dickens, he obviously was a very well-read person. He was close friends with leading writers of that time. So probably he had a good idea of what they were writing. He probably was reading their books, but he doesn't mention his reading much in his letters or in his diaries. So that's why all the information that we have of his reading is either from his works, if he mentions certain novels in his novels. So that kind of gives you an idea that he probably has read that book. Or another source is his close friend who also was his biographer. So he wrote biography of Charles Dickens. The friend's name was Foster. So the only source of information are these 2 sources primarily. On the internet I found a very interesting article. So all the books that I will be talking today about are from this article, and I will link it down below in the description box. It was actually published in Modern Language Notes in 1920, volume 35. It was published by the Johns Hopkins University Press, and the author is R.F. Dibble. So everything that I will be talking about today is from this article, and the article will be linked down in the description box down below. And now let's start with the books that Charles Dickens was reading. So in David Copperfield, in chapter 4, there is this famous passage. My father had left a small collection of books in a little room upstairs, to which I had access, and which nobody else in our house ever troubled. From the blessed little room, Roderick Random, Peregrine Pickle, Humphrey Clinker, Tom Jones, the Vicar of Wakefield, Don Quixote, Gil Blas, and Robinson Crusoe came out a glorious host to keep me company. They kept alive my fancy and my hope of something beyond that place and time. They and the Arabian Nights and the tale of Genji, and did me no harm, for whatever harm was in some of them was not there for me. So in this passage, as you can see, he mentions quite a few books that his young character was reading, and the author of the article suggests that this list of books is very much autobiographical, so based on Charles Dickens's own reading as a child. So let's quickly go through these books. The first book he mentions is The Adventures of Roderick Random. It was a novel by Tobias Smollett, published in 1748. It is partially based on Smollett's own experiences as a naval surgeon's mate at Royal Navy. Smollett also acknowledged that his novel was very much inspired by two works that he himself translated, by Don Quixote and Gil Blas by Alain René Lesage. The novel is set in 1730s, 1740s England, and we follow a life of this young boy, Roderick Random, who was born to a wealthy gentleman and his lower class wife. And because his wife was from a lower class, he was pretty much shunned away by his father's family. But his mother dies after giving birth, and his dad goes mad after losing the love of his life. And then Roderick's grandfather, on his father's side, he finds the school. He asks the principal of the school to take on the boy. Roderick comes to the school. He is very popular with the students, quite popular with other teachers, but there is this one particular teacher who hates him for some reason. And then Roderick, I guess, plays a trick on this abusive teacher who hated him. And then as a revenge, this teacher denounces Roderick to his grandfather. And so Roderick is expelled from the school. His father wants to do nothing with him. And then the boy goes to London and gets into lots of adventures and misadventures. He finds a friend. He also becomes a surgeon's mate, travels visiting London, Bath, France, South Africa, India, so lots of places. His honest and trustworthy character wins him lots of friends, and it is a satirical adventure novel, so it sounds very interesting. I don't know if I want to read it, but it does sound interesting. But apparently Charles Dickens as a kid enjoyed it very much. One more novel that you remember mentioned in the paragraph was The Expedition of Humphrey Clinker by the same author, Tobias Smollett, and this is his last work. It was published in 1771, just a few months before the death of the author, and it is considered by many his best work and also his funniest work. Actually, William Thackeray called it the most laughable story that has ever been written since the goodly art of novel writing began. So a lot of people considered it his funniest work. Basically, it is an epistolary novel, so written in the form of letters by 6 different characters. We follow this main man of the family, so Humphrey Clinker. He is a sickly older gentleman, and for his health he goes to different spa towns and spa cities. So he travels around England and Scotland. Together with him, 6 other members of his family come along, or five other members of his family come along. And all of them write letters to their friends or to other members of their family who were left in the house, and they all write about the same events, but obviously in a different way, because everybody had a different perspective. And so, from what I understand, the humor of the novel actually arises from this different perspective of the same. This actually sounds very interesting. I would like to check it out, because apparently it's his best work, the funniest work. It also provides a very true and deep observations of that time political scene and that time social scene and life. So it's interesting to see what Victorians were laughing about, what they had going on in their lives and in their political and social lives. I would like to check out that novel. Apparently it's not too long, which is good, because there is some other novel on this list which is like 17 volumes, if I'm not mistaken. 17 volumes! I'm like, no. I'm very sorry, but I'm not reading that one. The Expedition of Humphrey Clinker, I would love to read. The next book I was talking about, which has not actually 17, 18 books. The events of the book take place in 18 books. The novel is The History of Tom Jones, a Foundling, by Henry Fielding. This one is also a humorous novel that was published in 1749 and is considered one of the first English novels. The novel is highly organized despite its length, despite having 18 volumes, and actually some people say that it has the best planned plot. Generally, it is regarded as Fielding's best work. And as the title suggests, Tom Jones is a story of a foundling A small baby was found by a squire and his sister in the squire's house. They tried to find the baby's parents, and one maid acknowledged that it was her baby, but she couldn't take care of him. So the squire sends her away in a place where nobody will know that about her situation, and he starts taking care about the baby himself. The boy grows and he becomes a very lively, lovable kid who is friends with pretty much everybody in the house, with all the servants and gardeners, and everybody loves him. He has a bunch of love adventures, but eventually for some reason he gets banned from the house and he sets to London, where he meets another person who was believed actually to be his father, and that's why he was banned from the place as well. And so together they go to London, and it's also a story about their adventures and misadventures and finding love and restoring your fortune and restoring your honor and your name. It does sound interesting and I do want to read it, but I think there is like a shortened version of this whole book, because I don't think I want to read all 18 volumes, but I think currently they sell it as maybe just one long book of like 1000 something pages. So yeah, it's a shorter, abridged version, and I think I would prefer to check out that. But it does sound actually very interesting, and I read in many commentaries that it's actually a very good character study. It's a great example of character study. And yeah, and you know, I love such things. I like books with well-developed and well-studied characters. So yeah, I would also like to check it out. Just a shorter version. The next book mentioned was The Wicker of Wakefield by an Irish author, Oliver Goldsmith. And this book was one of the most popular novels in Victorian period, and it was one of the most widely read novels. In this book we follow a story of misadventures of a vicar, Dr. Charles Primrose. Initially he was a very well-off vicar. He had lots of money, but for some reason eventually he becomes bankrupt. He loses all of his money. He is forced to leave his house and find a new place. And during his travels lots of misadventures happen. His daughter almost gets drowned, and then she falls in love with a man and she runs away with him, and then our vicar gets into prison. So there's lots of misadventures, a lot of things are happening, and it's just a story of a family trying to find their new place without having any money for life. And it's also a social commentary. It is also supposed to be quite funny as far as I understand. So I would definitely like to check this book out. It sounds very good. So, and Charles Dickens loved it, so I guess it's worth checking out and worth your attention. The next book is a French novel, Gil Blas by Ellen Renée Lesage. Fun fact, Fyodor Dostoevsky also read this book and he also loved it. So it was also Dostoevsky, one of Dostoevsky's favorite. So Gil Blas is a story also of a young boy who went to the University of Salamanca, and he has a bright future for himself. But he was traveling somewhere, and on the road he was forced to help robbers. Eventually for that he gets into prison, and all of his bright future is ruined. After getting out of the prison he becomes a valet. During his valet days he obviously observes lives of many different classes of society. Because of his occupation he has to meet lots of disreputable people and he has to adjust to diverse situations. He has very quick mind and he's also good with people, adapts very easily to whatever comes his way, and so it's a story of his life. The fact that two great authors loved this book so much makes me excited, and I also want to find it and pick it up. So Gil Blas by Ellen Renée Lesage. One more novel Charles Dickens read as a child, if we assume that the list that he gives in David Copperfield is autobiographical, is none other than Don Quixote by Cervantes. And I am very excited because there is a high chance, there's a high possibility that we will be reading Don Quixote with the big book club, with the BBB in January and February, because currently it is in the lead. We still have some time till the 10th of December, because on the 10th of December I will be announcing the book that we will be reading, because a few people have raised a very valid concern that if I announce it too late, then a lot of people will not be able to get the book in time. And so I decided that I will announce the book on the 10th of December, because by that time voting will pretty much probably will stop, and everybody who wanted to vote will have already voted. And so yeah, on the 10th of December you will know the book that we will be reading in January and February, and it very much might be Don Quixote. Charles Dickens loved it as well, which makes me excited. And as all of you know, Don Quixote is this very well known story of a man who wanted to become a knight, and he went on lots of adventures with his friend Sancho Panza, and he was trying to make the world a better place. And it's supposed to be very funny. It was Dostoevsky's favorite book. It is constantly being quoted the best book of all time. So I am very excited. Hopefully we will get to read it soon. But yeah, Charles Dickens. Read it as a child, loved it. The last novel that was mentioned in the passage that I want to talk to you about is a Japanese novel, classic Japanese novel, and it's The Tale of Genji by Lady Murasaki. I have had my eye on this novel for so long. I'm a little bit intimidated because obviously it's long, obviously it's must be a difficult read, but at the same time Charles Dickens read it as a kid and he was okay with that. Like, I am in my late 20s. Why am I afraid of it? I should just pick it up and read. Maybe I will suggest it for our BBB for our big book reading club. We will see. Maybe. Are you interested? I can suggest it if you want. Tale of Genji is considered one of the earliest novels in the world, not just like in Japan, in the world. It was written in the 11th century, and it is a very vivid portrayal of courtly life in Japan of that period. Lady Murasaki was a lady in the court. She actually has a diary which I own, and which first I want to read her diary and then I will read Tale of Genji. Genji is a prince. He is a son of the emperor, and in this novel we follow his life in the court, his political adventures and misadventures, his love affairs, his family. He has a very fiery temper, and that's also what contributes to many of his problems. And so yeah, basically it's a story of life of this prince with fiery temper and his political ambitions. So I will read it at some point, definitely, for sure. I will read Tale of Genji. I would love to read it with you if you are interested. Let me know if you would like me to suggest it for our next round of BBB. Also, Charles Dickens was a big fan of Daniel Defoe and Robinson Crusoe. What he has something that he mentioned about Robinson Crusoe. He was impressed that this novel had nothing in it to make anyone laugh or cry. However, it was still interesting and readable. Another book by Daniel Defoe that Charles Dickens enjoyed was History of the Devil. As for Daniel Defoe, I'm sure all of you know that it's a story of the only survivor of a shipwreck and his survival story on an island for a long time. I haven't read that book. I don't know if I'm interested, to be honest. Let me know in the comments if you have read Robinson Crusoe and if you liked. Obviously you hear about it all the time. People talk about it all the time, especially in school. I have been recommended it plenty of times. So those were the novels that Charles Dickens read as a kid. And now off to the books that he read when he was a student and when he was already older in his life. The first book that I want to mention is Scenes of Clerical Life by George Eliot. He also has a saying about it, so he shared his feelings, I guess, to his friend Foster. And so what he said: George Eliot's Scenes of Clerical Life he speaks of as being one of the best things I have seen since I began my course, and remarks that he can never say enough of these stories because they're so admirable. And actually Charles Dickens wrote to George Eliot saying about scenes of clerical life. He said, "I hope you will excuse my writing to you to express my admiration, the exquisite truth and delicacy both of the humor and the pathos of those stories I have never seen the like of." He was very much impressed. He was very much impressed. You can tell he really liked that book. And basically, Scenes of Clerical Lives by George Eliot is a collection of 3 short novellas, and they practically describe lives of ordinary people in a small town. It actually considered to start new period in English literature, new realism period, and they contain George Eliot's favorite themes, which is religion, how religion affects life of ordinary small people, and also the topic of love, how love can transform people's lives. After reading Silas Marner, I actually have had my eye on Scenes of Clerical Life, because I also have her Middlemarch. It's right there behind my matryoshkas. I also have her Middlemarch, but I am intimidated by her Middlemarch. Silas Marner was a little bit hard for me, just language-wise. Like, language-wise, it was a little bit hard for me to get through. So I feel like I need to read just more of George Eliot to kind of get used to her language and get used to her writing style. And so once I read her shorter works, I feel like I will be ready to get to Middlemarch. But I adored Silas Marner. I adored that book. That little book is just brilliant. So I want to check out her other books. It's just that I think I will start with the shorter ones, with the smaller ones. Middlemarch will be my grand finale, my grand finale of George Eliot's writings. The next English novel that he admired very much was actually Mary Barton by Elizabeth Gaskell, and he also wrote about this novel to his friend, and he mentioned that this is a book that most profoundly affected and impressed me. Those are Charles Dickens' words. He liked Mary Barton, which I have heard lots about. I have watched Katie from Books and Things talk about Mary Barton a lot. I think it's one of her favorite novels. I think it's one of her favorite Victorian novels. I'm not sure which place it's on, but it's one of her favorite. And it was actually Katie who got me interested in the book in the first place. And now that I know that Charles Dickens loved it, it makes me even more excited to pick it up. I know for sure that I will read Mary Barton at some point. The novel is set in Manchester in 1840, and it depicts life of working class during the age of industrialization. At the same time, it also shows the relationship in the community between the master and his working men. And it's also a story of Mary. And primarily her love story. I guess there will be like a love triangle between her and 2 other guys. But Mary Barton has always been praised by many people for its vivid realism, for its great character studies, and also for the sympathy with the poor. And apparently even in our time, it is still a very relevant work, and it is still very much loved by many people who read it. I want to love it too, so I will definitely read Mary Barton. Let me know if you have read it, if you liked it. Now off to American literature, and from American literature he read Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is a difficult name to pronounce, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. Nathaniel Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne. And he very much enjoyed the collection of his short stories, Moses from an Old Manse. And he even constantly urged his friend Foster to give this book a read, because he was very much excited. However, he didn't really like the Scarlet Letter, and he criticized it a lot. He also read Uncle Tom's Cabin, and he thought that a lot of parts in this book were admirably done. So I have this book, I need to read it. I have this beautiful Knickerbocker's edition. And he has also briefly mentioned reading The Castle of Ontario. So there wasn't any details of his reaction to the book, but he just briefly mentioned it. However, The Castle of Ontario is considered one of the most influential books in the literary history, because it created the genre of the Gothic novel, and it's the first Gothic novel. and it's also some kind of family mystery and family drama as far as I understand, because there is this man who is killed on the day of his wedding, Conrad, and then his calculating father decides to marry his bride, but a series of terrifying supernatural omens soon threaten this unlawful union, and the curse placed on Manfred's ancestors begins to unfold. So this is the premise of the book. I really want to read Castle of Ontario. There you have it, guys. Those were the books that I could find, that the author of the article could find, that Charles Dickens read, and some of them he admired. Hopefully this video was interesting and entertaining and also educational a little bit. Let me know in the comments which of the novels you have read, what you thought of it, which of the novels now you are interested in reading. I definitely want to read George Eliot, Mary Barton, definitely Tale of Genji, for sure Tale of Genji at some point, maybe even with our book club. And also the English novels that I was talking about in the beginning. So there were so many names. Tom Jones, and then Roderick Random, and The Expedition of Humphrey Clinker for sure. Vicar of Wakefield as well, and the French novel Gilles Blas. So there has been a lot of interesting books that I can add to my wish list. Let me know in the comments which ones you want to read, and for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a very good day. I hope you're staying safe, and I will see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.